All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to have Carlos Childs, friend of the show, friend of Hal,
Awesome.
on this on today. It's Thursday. Well, we're recording this Wednesday night, Carlos, but it'll be live or it'll be broadcast Thursday at noon. How are you?
Good, good, good. Always glad to be here, Hal. Ready to talk about the most pressing issues and the craziest drama of this country.
It's always fun to talk to you, Carlos, because we see things pretty much eye to eye, and that's rare for me. I don't know. Do you find that most people that you interact with have pretty different views?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, most of the people I'm friends with, I know, even well, not really my family per se, but are most like leftist people. But when it gets to some of my family members, it's more that like middle ground type of like you're a good Democrat type of vibe.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. We're going to talk about the Brianna Joy Gray interview with Jamal Bowman. And I thought it was really interesting when she talked about her family. Her mom was a Green voter,
Yeah,
which I thought was very interesting and made some
that's
sense.
yeah, that's really surprising. Like, I don't know a lot of people who are like outside of the duopoly at all, even for somebody's parents to be outside of the duopoly.
Yeah, same here. It was kind of a surprise, but knowing her politics just from watching her program, it wasn't such a shock because clearly that's who she is. She's made it clear she's abandoned the Democratic Party. We're going to talk about first. I think we'll talk about Breonna Joy Gray and Jamal Bowman in a bit, but we'll talk about how a lot of Democrats are leaving the Democratic Party. They may not be joining the Greens, but this was very interesting. At least the title: "Why Democrats Are Losing My Generation." And the hint there is interesting because it seems like Democrats, at least Democratic consultants and electeds, are saying it's all because of Joe Rogan. It's sort of an interesting take. Do you have any like
Yeah,
top line what the biggest factor is?
yeah. To me, I think it was a. I don't think Joe Rogan would have won her this race, but I do think it would have helped. And okay, it could have helped or harmed depending on how she seemed. If she seemed like your normal robotic kind of standard issue politician, I think it would have hurt her more. It would have made her seem like okay, there's no relatability of a person. If she would have gone on there and been like real, showed her real actual self, I think that it could have helped, not helped, but it could have like kind of stopped the bleeding a little bit. But was it the Joe Rogan podcast? No, I don't think that that was like very decisive. I think you had like a few voters who may have been, I don't know, like your populist centrist people, like your populist slightly right people.
One of the points that people make about Joe Rogan that really frustrates me, and I don't know if you see it the same way, he's often referred to Carlos as a conservative podcaster. And I don't see that at all. He endorsed Bernie. He's kind of a populist. I don't think he really has, he's not really easily pegged on the spectrum, but I would not call him a conservative.
Really, I would call him kind of like a populist conservative where I can't I think beforehand when he had more like leftists on more actual like people who represent a populist side of the left then he was just more like broad based like he had on leftist people conservative people but all within a populist message and what he's been doing more and more now is more on the conservative populist side just with the commentators the people he has on and the type of conversations that they get into, and even famously the one he had with that guy who was totally against the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and was just like, "Oh no, it's a scam of Elizabeth Warren's," and there was no kind of like pushback to it. It was like, "Oh really? Like wow." So they just get rid of company banking to so that they can not be conservative.
Well, there's definitely capture by many of these podcasters by, I would say, money interest. It's not necessarily the right, it's just by money interest. And you see that with people like Kalinsky and, other, I don't know, I'm trying to think who are some
TYC
others
as
who've
a
kind
whole.
of become captive.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
TYC as a whole is more like a centrist kind of news station now.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
TYT.
Oh, you think, yeah, although they're getting all the pushback because they kind of, at least on a lot of the identity issues, move to the right, but have made the point, I think TYT, to its credit, have made the point that Bernie's been right about this, that the issues need to be front and center: pocketbook, the
yeah.
economy, and working class people. And that has earned the ire of some of
Well,
his former uh, mates.
I'll say that I think that I'll 3/4 of the way agree with that. How I'll also say for 1/4 of it, I think that they have also gone conservative when it comes to policing, when it also comes to like homelessness as well, where they're more in favor of just locking up people for homelessness or just getting them off the streets rather than actually providing the services that people need, or even having a more message of like the police are they're here to help, and we know now they're not here to help. They're more here to do cleanup afterwards, but also to keep certain communities in check.
100%, Carlos. That's a great point. You're right. Anna definitely moved right on policing issues, blaming the. It was really strange. Like she was saying, we need the police to be cracking heads basically because of the demented homeless man, or what I think psychotic is probably the right term. I think he had heard voices and he punched somebody. And it is horrible. I mean, of course, it's scary,
Yeah.
but the failure wasn't that the police don't crack down. The failure was we don't spend nearly enough money on helping people who have mental illness, making sure, by the way, that people aren't sleeping on the streets, because if you're homeless, you're more likely to go
Yeah.
crazy, right? To use that term. I mean, because it's awful. Of course, your mind is going to start to become paranoid. You have every reason to feel paranoid. So I agree with you. That's a great point about TYT that I hadn't really thought of. So yeah, that's absolutely true. We see that with Democratic. And I know we got some. I got the slides, but it's such an interesting conversation. And I thought you'd have some take on Gavin Newsom as well, going on Charlie Kirk and punching down, punching a hippie when he goes after the trans community and homeless people too.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
No, I think it's sad whenever you see Democrats try to move up the rung to like, oh, this position to this position. It's always let me go ahead and tack to the right just a little bit to make sure I can shore up these section of voters who will not vote for you anyway. But two, let me also put down like just people who are trying to live day by day. To me, I don't. It seems like Gavin Newsom is really keying into this Charlie Kirk. Next, he's going to have on who is it? Some other conservative talking head. But what he said about trans people, now, I think the issue when it comes to sports is a very nuanced issue. I think it's also an issue that, weirdly enough, you see people like Charlie Kirk talk about identity politics, but they bring up the trans issue so much, which can also be seen as identity politics. To me, they comprise of what, less than
It's like
5%?
1%.
Yeah,
I think there's some study, there's some dispute on the numbers, but it's about 1-2%. I say that maybe not quite that high, but my sons at their school had maybe one or two kids who were trans, who identified as trans in their classes, and their class size was like 4, maybe 450. So maybe under 1%, we'll say.
okay, then yeah, like it's not even a big population. I feel like when people when people's economic needs aren't met, they start punching at whoever looks different than them, sounds different, talks different, whatever. And it was like, okay, here's a group of people. It's not a lot of them, so it shouldn't be hard to get a bunch of people against them. When it's like, no, these are humans just like the rest of us that we should be saying, okay, cool. How can we make you feel accepted within the country and yeah, let you live your life. Like everyone has their civil freedoms, and it seems like there's this thing of like, well, let me throw them under the bus as if they shouldn't be treated as people.
Well, I think you're right. I will just totally coming clean. I've talked about this before. When it comes to the narrow issue of trans girls and women participating in athletic contests against biological girls and women, I do not agree with that. I do think that girls and women's sports should be reserved to or for people who are conceived female. That I do believe, but on pretty much all other trans issues, I'm with the trans community. I don't have a problem. This is my take. You may have a different one. I'm giving you my view. I don't have a problem with Gavin Newsom agreeing with Kirk on that issue. Where I have a problem with him is not saying, hey, maybe we can find some common ground on this issue, but I believe every single American deserves the right to health care. That's critically important. He never mentioned health care. I don't think we should be supporting wars on the other side of the planet that are making us less safe, or on the side of genocidal maniacs like Netanyahu. But he didn't pay even lip service to progressive issues, Carlos. So he leaves me with nothing.
No, it honestly, watching it, if you saw at the bottom right-hand corner, like the Charlie Kirk show, you would think, okay, this fits. Because Charlie Kirk led with it. It was his issues. It was his kind of priority points. And Gavin Newsom seemed more like a guest of like, hey, so what do you think about these ideas?
Yeah, and it was Newsom's show. That's a really important point. It was Newsom's podcast. And yeah, he let the righty, the hard right guy, dominate and kind of, steer the ship, which is, I think, terrible politics. But let's ask that question that's on the screen.
Oh, real quick for that, the next guest I was thinking about is Steve Bannon. He's having on, so he's doing a real collection of people on the right.
Well, is that going to help him to answer the question on the screen? Is that going to help him win back the young voters who barely supported Harris at all?
No, if anything, it's going to make them lose them even more. If he really wanted to win young voters, you start having on more young voters, start talking to more young podcasters, start talking about young people issues. But instead of that, he's going to get the old-looking Steve Bannon to come in and tell people about the problem with young people, probably.
Well, Charlie Kirk is young-looking, but I honestly don't think his views are representative of most young people. He doesn't even express concern, probably as a climate crisis denier, as far as I know. The trans issue is probably least popular. The anti-trans position is least popular among young voters. And also young voters tend to be more pro-peace. So I think Newsom is absolutely hurting himself if his goal is to try to reach more young voters.
Maybe we'll see him on Joe Rogan.
No, you'll see him on Bill Maher.
Oh, Lord. We're getting worse and worse with these people. How they're doing worse.
It's awful. He might go on Bill Maher. He might go on Rogan. I could see Newsom, although I don't know that his kind of look, the slick hair, the metrosexual vibe that he definitely exudes. I don't know that works well with the professional wrestling Rogan.
It'd be a weird
guy.
Conversation. It'd be a weird conversation.
I want to go to this article from The Nation because I definitely wanted your take. There's a lot in it. And one of the points, and I don't agree with everything in it at all, but one of the points the writer made is that the Democrats, because of Obama especially, kind of got a false sense of security that the young generation was with them because of Obama. And he makes the point, the writer does, he describes Obama here as a young, hip, charismatic leader. And I think that's true, right? And I think that was a big factor. But in terms of policy, Obama didn't move the goalposts so that life would be easier for younger people. I think I would posit.
Oh, I 100% agree with you with all of it. I think he was refreshing. He was charismatic. He made you want to go support him. He made you believe in a vision for a better America. Now, when he got in there, did he do any of those things? No. I mean, did he do the ACA? Yes. Was it Mitt Romney's healthcare plan? Yes. I mean, like he did like little minor tweaks here and there that you can call a good thing. I mean, if you look at it just on the surface. But nah, I agree with what you said. He was charismatic. He made you like him.
And I think there's a bit of a hangover. I think a lot of us were just so excited by the prospect, again, of a younger, uh, certainly seemingly progressive, extremely intelligent, extremely articulate leader who, for progressive whites like myself, African American, how cool, and truly African American because his father is African, he's Kenyan, and mom is American. So it was like, wow, this is like the whole package, and there was a real, kind of a buzz, and the buzz has worn off because the policies that he pursued didn't really lead to change, to the hope and change we were hoping for. And I think that's a big issue. That's not really pointed out in this article. I think he doesn't do enough work pointing out the failure of Democratic policies writ large. He does discuss Bernie Sanders. And I love this phrase here, Clinton's potpourri of hawkishness and cynically deployed identity politics. Exactly correct, I think.
It is. It is. I always wonder what happens in life where people like speak in this like such like eloquent type of language, because I could never have even imagined that. But I do. I think he's, yeah, pointed out brilliantly. Hillary Clinton she was like a neocon, pro-war, neo-lib, like fever dream. Like she was the standard issue model of what a typical just horrible candidate was. Like all wrapped up in like pointless, and I try not to say this too much, but pointless identity politics. Like very much like I keep hot sauce in my bag. Like to me there was nothing. There was nothing of substance, and just running off of like the current political culture. That was it.
Well, I remember meeting when I was working as an organizer for Our Revolution Maryland. We were building a chapter in Anne Arundel. Well, it was Anne Arundel County actually. Now that I think about it, though, we started in Baltimore County because one of the leaders there worked in Baltimore, but he lived in Anne Arundel. So we were building in Anne Arundel County, and a bunch of the folks that I met with were from the LGBTQ community, including I think several of those letters. It wasn't just one. Mm-hmm. And you would think if anybody, I mean, the stereotypical would be, oh, they want you to use pronouns, right? And you got to be all in good with, I don't even know, right? And this is like me, the like totally white bread, not clueless guy. And we talked about this, and they talked about how Hillary, was big on, I don't know, whatever. She was talked a lot of big game on identity politics. And these folks were like, it's all bullshit. They were all for Bernie. They were like, we don't care about that crap about like whether, you're, I don't know, giving a land acknowledgement or if you're, again, using pronouns, which I don't think were big at that point. But they were like, none of this mattered. We looked at what Bernie was talking about, economics. We're young. It's hard for us to get work. We're living on our parents. I'm sleeping on my father's sofa, my parents' living room. I didn't give a crap about, those issues.
And I mean, you're right. I think the majority of the country, in my opinion, does not care about a very large swath of issues. Even how right here in the news, you see a lot of things about pronouns and all. Now, I do think that the pronoun issue is a real issue that should kind of, I've always looked at it and I've never understood people's issue with it. Like that, land acknowledgements, to me, that takes like, 2 minutes out of your day to just do it.
No, I respect it. Do what people call people whatever they want to be called. That's fine with me. If you wanted to be Carla Childs, I'd call you Carla. I don't care. Exactly. But the point that these folks were making is they just saw it as kind of a pander. It was a lip service. It didn't really address the real needs in their life, which was fair wages, good jobs, affordable education was so big for this group. Carlos, early 20s, late teens, folks who even Anne Arundel Community College was a burden economically to attend.
Bernie spoke to the issues that affect people's actual material day-to-day lives. Things that I need to be able to position myself to make a good living, to be able to afford a nice home, to be able to, you know, have education, to be able to have like all the things that we should have in this modernized society that we live in. But and I think honestly that affects more people, and more people care about that first. More people feel like put me in a better living standard and situation, then I will tackle your these like identity type issues. And I think a lot of people would be less kind of hawkish against identity issues if we were all doing good economically. Because I think if you're doing bad economically, and on top of that, people say, I want you to change how you do X, Y, and Z, people feel like, okay, wait, this is way too much at one time.
I think the trans athlete issue has an economic component
Really?
because trans girls and women, to the extent that they take spaces on varsity athletic squads and possibly scholarships, do reduce the opportunities for other girls and women.
Mm. Okay, I've never looked at it in that way. I think that to me, you also have like maybe, and maybe the fix of all of this would be changing how we look at sports. Should it be based off of your actual like physical makeup, muscle mass, and things like that when it comes to playing sports at all? Should it be like you put people in categories with people who are closer to their like physiological makeup at that time that they're playing it? I don't, but I also say that there's been a kind of a route of some people saying, well, let's have a trans only team, knowing that it's not enough trans people to be on a trans only team, so there wouldn't be those sports at all. So I wouldn't know what should happen in that whole aspect, but I do think that there should, like, to me, you having trans women play in women's sports for certain sports, I don't think people would ever question it. Like if you're talking about competitive like a not like competitive bowling or something, I don't think anyone's gonna say, hey, that there's a problem with that. I think when you get to these more physical sports, I think it's we have to possibly come up with a new way that we should section people into sports.
So I'll give you whatever it's worth my take. If if you're a trans uh, girl, so let me say it the other way. If you're a trans boy or man and you want to compete in sports, then I would say don't transition. Don't take or at least you can don't transition to the point where you're taking hormones and estrogen, and so you lose muscle mass. If you want to compete athletically, then and you're male, then stay male and compete as a male. If you're a girl, same thing. Don't take the hormone, don't take testosterone because it'll make your muscle grow, and you definitely can compete against females. I don't have any issue with a trans female or trans girl. It's not really trans female, trans girl competing against boys. But if you are going to transition physiologically, then there's an issue. That's where the issue comes in. And likewise, I don't think it's such a big issue with trans boys because girls can still compete against, if they're biologically female, then still compete against girls. But you have to make the decision. What's more important to me? If I'm going to physiologically transition, then maybe I have to give up sports.
Mm-hmm.
Second possibility, I agree with you. There probably aren't enough for sports teams to compete in trans leagues, but you can have lots of individual sports. You can have trans games where you have, running, racing, tennis, where you have
Okay.
one-on-one competition.
Okay. I mean, the last idea I can see that working out in certain ways and then also think maybe that could start and then the mindset change about sports overall. But what would you say about having it based off of your like well actually two things before that. One, I wonder what's the rate of actual like trans women or girls competing in biologically female sports that don't win, because we always talk about the ones that win. I would wonder just if it's more who don't win than do win. It's just these small instances. But on top of that, what do you think about having it to where it is based off of your like physiological makeup at that time? So if you have a trans woman and a biological woman who have similar like body masses, muscle masses, things like that, having them compete against each other because they have the same kind of makeup or
Well,
physical status.
I'm really actually curious what you think about to answer your own question. So I'll push it back at you in a second, Carlos. But I think that, men and women, you have to draw a line somewhere. I would say it this way. You have to draw a line somewhere. I was really interested in some studies that show that males and females actually contain DNA that's of the opposite sex. So I may well have, even though I'm XY because I'm a man, so I'm XY predominantly, and I have children to prove it, right? But I know I'm just saying because that's sort of where you ultimately can draw a line, right? If you can father, a child or the other way, it's not the only test, and it doesn't prove you're not or whatever. But even though I'm XY, I may well have some XX DNA, right? That because there actually is a bit of a spectrum, but still you have to draw a line. Even if you say, well, there's a spectrum that, even the most macho, LeBron James, right? Someone like that, who's like built like a locomotive, even he probably has some female DNA. And you could take an extremely feminine woman and she might well still have some XY.
Yeah.
So we are a bit on a spectrum, but all that said, you still have to draw a line. You still have to decide at this point, only people to the right or only people to the right can play in women's sports because you just can't have, big, strong, strapping men. Serena Williams said she would have lost to she couldn't have gotten a point against a top male tennis player. Didn't matter. They're just different. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. Can't beat them.
I think so. That's why my thing was them doing it off of what is it? Off of like muscle mass index and things like that, and then putting teams together around that. So depending on what the sport is, if it's like a football or I guess flag football or hockey or something like that, you have teams made up of people with similar body mass indexes, similar muscle masses, so that it is more overall fair. Because then you could also look at fairness of should it be do we see some sports being judged based off of like how well you actually play the game, what you actually know how to do but you could have someone who's playing basketball 6'5" competing against someone who's like 5'11". That's not always going to be the same. Or in swimming, you can have a tall person competing against a much shorter person. Your wingspans are different, so that changes who would win and who wouldn't win. So maybe you should have a team of people who are made up of similar body sizes or all that.
Do you think is that what you would propose, or at least to test it to see if it works?
Yeah. I think that could be. Yeah, I'd propose that as like a test of like, hey, let's do even if it was like the NCAA and other sports teams said, hey, look, what we're going to do is we're going to do this as a test case, see if it works and what people think about it, and then see if that could be something that moves forward.
I don't see any harm in trying anything. I'm a little skeptical just because even when you talk about height, I think if you took I thought this was an interesting discussion online. Could Caitlin Clark, she's the top woman basketball player right now. Mm-hmm. How would she fare against a fellow Hawkeye? She's from Iowa, and this football player, I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl, but the Philadelphia cornerback who had that interception early in the game he's like 22, 23. So they're about the same age. They knew each other. He's an incredible athlete. He was also he's 6 feet. He's the same height. They're the same height. He may be shorter. Wow. And he can dunk and all this stuff, right? I mean, of course he can dunk, but he's like 4'40", like super fat. The whole 9 yards is a great athlete. And there was this debate, could he beat her in basketball? And my answer is, of course. It's not even close. I mean, he would just torture. He can jump through the top of the gym. She can't, he would block her shots. She might have some more skills in certain areas, but the physical advantages that he has would be just beyond, but that's just my take. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But my thought is there's just too big a gap between the best men and the best women in sports. And they really can't compete, even if you even things. That's just my reaction. But I agree with maybe on high school, it's a great idea. Maybe in college, lower, not top level. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
And that may be something that brings more, or just like you said, doing on like the high school or college level you could find more trans athletes that way. So that you may have at some point a separate trans athletes league, or however they do it.
So I want to ask you a question, because we kind of threw some shade at Hillary. We don't like Hillary. What is it, like her cynical use of identity politics? But after we've also now had Trump for full term, 2016, 2020. Now he's reelected, beat Harris. Do you have I don't know if you voted for Hillary in 2016. I know we went through this. I think you were able to vote or you weren't able to vote. I did not vote for her. I did not. Do you regret either not voting for her then or not voting for Harris in 2024? Do you feel like, look at how bad Trump is but come on, Carlos, I was talking to somebody about this. They're like, Trump is the devil. He is the devil incarnate was the answer. So therefore you had to vote for Harris. You had, as you could, how I hear you, I don't like Hillary either, and she's bad and she's pro-war, and Harris never said she would, it's the same thing. We're going to do the same thing over and over with Palestine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're talking about Beelzebub. You had to. So how do you respond to that? Maybe you agree with that.
I would say, one, I am over the moon ecstatic that I didn't vote for Hillary Clinton and that I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. And I didn't vote for Trump either. I voted for Bernie Sanders and then for the Green Party this last election. One, I think that honestly, it shows how much we need to prioritize civics being taught in the education system of America, because people don't fully understand the Electoral College. Because my one vote for Jill Stein and the Green Party does not change anything in Maryland. If anything, it did one good thing in Maryland to where it got the Green Party to 1%, so they don't have to petition to be on the ballot this next election. So we did something good. Like when people say, "Oh, voting for the Green Party did nothing," we have at least one tangible that we can flex.
And it's big. I think it's a big tangible too. I don't think it's a little nothing, because it means now we'll have a choice in the governor's race. You don't have to spend all that time and money on gathering signatures. It can be used for get out the vote operation and for communications. So yes, that's a great point. There was a real benefit to voting for Stein in Maryland.
Yeah. And then when they say, oh, well, one, yes, the whole civics thing. Two, we cannot keep saying it's the best of two evils, or the least of two evils, and then be shocked and amazed why each time the candidates for both sides are getting worse. Because at some point you have to let them know there's a red line that I have. And if you don't let them know that there's a red line that you have, things are just going to keep getting worse. Like next election, you may have, I want to ask people too, if Liz Cheney was running against Donald Trump, would people vote for, I think honestly, a lot of Democrats would say, I'll vote for Liz Cheney.
I'm with you on this, because I don't accept the argument that we know for a fact that Hillary and Kamala would have been less bad than Trump. I don't know that. I mean, Trump is bad. I don't want to defend. I mean, it's horrible. It's awful what he's doing. And this arrest of this Palestinian has me very, very upset. Carl, very upset. Yeah, I think he's a fascist. But then on the other hand, the bombs, and as bad as he is with Netanyahu, and he's bad. I mean, they're bad. The bombs aren't right now falling in Gaza. And for all we know, they would be falling if it was Harris. And he is trying to stop the war in Ukraine. I really believe that. And I agree with that policy. So I can't say no. I look at myself and I made a terrible mistake, because I don't even know that a different outcome in terms of the result would mean we're in a better place as a country.
I think that, to me, I think that Kamala and Trump were bad for their own various reasons. I think some things like the brazenness of the fascism and authoritarian is something that I feel like we had greatly had to worry about with Donald Trump. But with Kamala Harris, it was going to be sort of like a quiet fascism authoritarian state like that we were going to come under. Kamala Harris was still saying that she wants to deport people at similar rates to what Donald Trump was saying. She supported a Republican deportation bill. She talked about how we need to empower the police, give them bigger budgets as well. So she talked bad about the protesters. So of the pro-Palestine protesters. So she showed all the same. And I think even when it comes to the genocide going on, her version, we don't like. We can say now Donald Trump is participating and actually leading ethnic cleansing within Gaza. The problem is Harris and Biden never really said what their plan was. So honestly, we would be there either way. It's
I
just
asked Jamie Raskin, I said, well, what's your counter plan? Trump says he wants to clean out Gaza and put all the Palestinians in Jordan and Egypt, and seems like a pretty crazy idea to me, to say the least, and also terrible. What do you propose? And I said that to Jamie Raskin. He had no answer. Oh, well, we just oppose Trump. I'm like, no, but do you have an alter? I mean, when Trump says you can't live there, he's kind of right. It is uninhabitable at this point. Now, I would agree. You bring in water, you bring in food, but the Israelis won't or deny that. But the Dems have no plan at all, and it's so upsetting. Making it personal a little bit, Carlos. What you're saying is exactly what I say. I feel we're totally on the same wavelength. When I try to communicate these views to people in my life, besides you, they're like, roll their eyes. They think I'm insane. Really? Oh, maybe Harris wasn't perfect. I get it. But, she cared about people. She cared about the Palestinians. That's what Jamal Bowman said. Remember, did you hear when he said that? He said, I believe she would have, what did he say?
I believe that we could have pushed her on the issue.
Yeah. And Brianna Joy Gray says to him, we'll play clips from this, but not that clip. Mm-hmm. Why? Why do you believe that? And he said, well, she mentioned them in a speech. But this is how people, no, but we can laugh about it. But lots of people, he's not saying something that I haven't heard from a lot of people.
Yeah, he's saying what a lot of people say. So he's saying, quote unquote, the mainstream position on this, which is really weird. Even people within my family who I talk to about like Kamala Harris issues, you still get that. Now with Kamala Harris, it's a little bit less in my family. It's a little bit less of a choice to defend her. It's more of a choice to defend like your Obamas. They still say I should have voted for Kamala Harris, things like that. And it comes out of more of this, look what Trump is doing when it comes to either federal jobs and things like that, which I do understand. I don't think Kamala Harris would have been trying to get rid of all these federal jobs. I will give her that. But even how they talk, like my family doesn't talk about Kamala Harris as if she would have been all that better. It's just more Trump was bad, so we just needed her at least to be the not as bad.
I'm in the same place. I hear the same thing. Nobody's defending Harris exactly. It's just why are you even talking about Harris? I hear that, like, why are you even talking about the Democrats? It's the problem is the Republicans. Maybe they're not great, but we're facing this threat from. So okay, but I think the threat's on both. But I'm just asking you how you deal, because I really do. I don't really question my sanity, but I kind of do a little bit, because I can't understand how people can see things so totally differently than I do.
I don't question my sanity. Maybe that's a part of my own ego.
Maybe you ought to maybe start.
Be like, hey, I'm not right. I'm not wrong. I'm right. But no, I think with like how I deal with it is just like always saying, okay, they've been in this Democratic Party so long that they don't see it for all as bad as it is. But I also think it's people feeling like there's no other options, that we only have two. And I always remind myself to tell people there are more than two options. You have another party that we can build up. But even when you say that, you get that criticism is, well, how long are we going to wait for the Green Party to be viable to where we can vote for them? And honestly, I've been using one kind of line on people about this, like the way the Democratic Party is going. I tell people they're going to go the way of like the Whigs during the Civil War. Like, hey, we're just not going to have the Democrats as a party. And I tell people like, so what do you think about the Democrat Party if it just like went away and then the Green Party became the other party? Honestly, people have said I'd be fine with that as long as it's something else other than just the Republican Party. So I think there's a moment out there, but I do think it's going to take a lot of, honestly, it's going to take the Green Party showing some actual like wins that they can give to people, not just not having to petition for an election. They're going to have to win some offices.
You got to win. You got to win, and they have not been able to. But it is really crucially important. I agree with you there, Carlos. And I just really want to get your take on responding to those so many who look at us like we've gone off the deep end, or well, you're really a Republican. I hear that a lot too. Well, you're obviously a Republican. You're you slobbering. I'll never forget this guy saying, "I'm sick of hearing you slobber on Trump's knob," and I'm like, okay, come on.
What?
That's
see, then that makes you question their sanity. So I have the opposite view. Like, is something wrong with them?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I always say when I don't badmouth Trump as much as you want, it's not because I like Trump. It's to show you how bad the Democrats are, that this phony huckster, crook is actually arguably better than they are on some issues. Yeah. That tells you how bad they are and why we need to go in a totally different direction. It's not like that means Trump's good. It means they're really, really bad.
I mean, honestly, if anything, you're helping the Democratic Party by saying, here's the problems, you need to fix it. But then two, it's like, I'm speaking to the Democratic Party because the Republican Party is not caring what I said. It's like, I'm not their base people.
100% on that. Thumbs up, whatever. If I do it's all weird because I think I have this thing on some sort of weird mirror. So my right is the left. If I go this way, it's on that side, and who the heck knows? All right, let's finish this Nation article, and then I want to get to. By the way, before do you really like Brianna Joy Gray? Because I actually really do. Although I didn't like it. She's apparently into astrology. Are you into that? Do you like
I'm not into astrology. I have some friends who are into it, and more, I believe that it does say what kind of personality people have, but past that, the whole horoscope thing now. But the personality thing, it's kind of on point for a lot of people.
Did you hear her talking about that? Because I was like, wow, okay. I mean, it didn't I'm not into any of that woo. Personally, I don't like any of that woo stuff. But I mean, it's fine. It doesn't, if that's what, it's harmless. But it was a little different. It was different.
Do you know what sign you are in the whole spectrum?
I do know I'm an Aries. I'm Aries the Ram. Okay. That I do know. Okay. How about yourself?
I'm a Capricorn.
Okay. So is that Aries? Aquarius is the water bearer.
Like the goatfish.
Capricorn's a fish.
It's like a goat fish. It's like goat horns and like a fish's tail.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a weird one. We're a weird one. That's
a little different, yeah. All right, so here's the final wrap-up of the Nation article, which I actually really like. If they want to win, you got to move beyond these gimmicky solutions like podcasts with Charlie Kirk. Direct shade thrown at Newsom there, well-deserved.
Good job.
And address problems facing head-on. If you keep nominating preferred establishment insiders, you're going to lose, and you're not going to like who we vote for. And the only problem I have with this piece, and I just want your take on it, is I don't think the author, and I think it's because the Nation won't do this, points out that the real problem with the Democrat Party is just corruption. I mean, they're corrupt. They're bought and paid for by billionaires, and the policies that would improve the quality of life for young voters, young people, would hurt the billionaires who fund the party.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, you see it all the time in who gets what committee seats, who gets what. Is if you're challenging someone in leadership's donors, they're because to me personally, I'm not going to be the one to say the reason Nancy Pelosi, like with the AOC chair thing. Look, could it be the AOC or that Nancy just personally doesn't like AOC? Yeah. Could it also be Nancy Pelosi's donors saying, look, I don't care if you like her or not. You will not give her a seat. because of what she did to me. So it's like,
Exactly.
it's honestly, the tail is not even wagging the dog. It's like literally swinging the dog in the air. Like the billionaires, not just billionaires, millionaires, billionaires, corporate interests, they're the ones who are actually the elected officials. We're just voting on the mouthpiece for these people.
I hate to say that. It's true. It's true. It's like, and we'll play. This is on the force the vote issue, which I would argue has, since the refusal of the squad to engage in force the vote in 2021, the wisdom of that strategy was absolutely proven by the Republicans who did engage in it, and they got all sorts of concessions from their leadership.
Before
And
you play this, one thing too, I wish Brianna would have like gone a little bit harder on that, saying, why do you, if they're saying there was no plan, why do you think it worked for the Republicans? Like what do you all, why didn't you all do what the Republicans, like after they did it? So why do you think it didn't work for you all?
she didn't ask him that. I didn't hear it. Now, you have to, if you subscribe and you pay her every month, you get a bigger, longer broadcast, which I didn't consider doing because I'm super cheap and I won't pay for anything. But I'm like,
There you go.
it sort of irritates me because I'm thinking, am I missing something here? Like she teases you. It's smart.
It is.
But it ain't going to work with me. I just, I'm not going to.
I have one. I made the.
Did you? Do you pay?
I heard it. Yep. I pay it each month the $5. But I
good for you. No, that's good.
Right? I'm doing something. So in my mind, I don't, or remembering back watching the whole thing through, she never really like pushed him in a like a simpler, just direct way of like, hey, you're saying there was no plan. You're saying no one reached out to you. Why do you think the Republicans had the thought of amongst themselves? Because no one within the Republican Party was or the activists or their base was saying, hey, do this force the vote thing. They came up with that themselves.
Well, you know what AOC's answer to that, and Jamie Raskin, they said, and I hope I say this clearly, because if I don't, I'll try to rephrase if you have trouble, but I think I'll say it clearly. Their answer was, when the Republicans forced the vote, the right-wing Republicans, that proved that they're not a serious party, that they can't unite, that they're not all together. We Democrats, yes, we don't always agree with Hakeem Jeffries, but in the end, he's our leader, and we're going to vote along with him. We're not going to break the party up, and we're not going to engage in petty spats. That's what they said. That was her answer.
How I hope whatever Jones juice that they're drinking, I hope it's strong, and I hope it has a good alcohol content in it. This is like cult. This is like the peak cult sense of we will always stand together no matter what, which is why, again, if Liz Cheney was ahead of the Democratic Party next week, they would start singing her praises and saying how great she has always been. I think the thing that Democrats should have, that one thing I will say that I wish Democrats did that Republicans did, was have the freedom to challenge leadership at any moment. Because even you look at Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was pro, I'm even forgetting what the man's name was again, but the Kevin McCarthy. You had Matt Gaetz, and who was the other one? Lauren Boebert, who led the charge against then speaker
against McCarthy, and I guess they put Smith, right? It's Smith now. Mike Smith, is that his name? Mike?
I think Mike Smith, or
it's not Byron? Smith. Johnson.
Yeah,
Johnson.
Yeah, they were the ones who were like, cool, we're fine with Johnson. They've had no repercussions. Lauren Boebert's still doing fine. Matt Gaetz is talking about running for governor of Florida. Byron Donalds still has his seat. They don't have the power to get rid of a lot of people, just how in the Democratic Party, if they didn't have their version of like Israel or basically Israel's pack coming after them, then Democrats will kind of be able to do what they want. Like, I don't think AOC has any question in her mind about her ability to get in office or stay in her office.
Of course, she's going to win her seat. She could challenge the leadership, and she would keep her seat. You make such a good point too there, Carlos, because the Republicans, rump, the far right freedom caucus, what do you want to call them? They didn't pay any price
No.
for standing up to leadership. But then you could look at AOC and say, "Oh, but she's been rewarded by the." I mean, they've slapped her down every time. She's been treated like dog crap, and she's like, and she's such a loyal lapdog too. She goes up there, and Kamala Harris has been working night and day for tirelessly for a ceasefire, and she raised all these millions of dollars for centrist Dems, and they just gave her the back of the hand. They don't. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. We're going to give the guy with cancer. We give the old guy with cancer who raises like 1/10 as much as you do. He'll get the committee assignment.
Yeah. So even her money doesn't matter to them. They're like, I don't care what you do, you stay in your place. But I even look at Rashida Tlaib, and it's like she didn't even support, I don't think, Harris or Biden in the general election.
No.
There's no consequences for her either. Like, at the end of the day, they are elected just like you are. They don't have consequences. The only people you would have to worry about is your APACs, your special interest lobbyist groups. And to me, honestly, you fighting against the establishment, you can raise your own money to be able to combat that in your district.
Well, let's listen to Bowman on Force the Vote. I think it's somewhat instructive. So we'll see what we get out of it.
Well,
and there were dozens of us. Real quick, hold on a second.
Yeah.
And I don't want to keep talking about this. There's many other things to talk about. I was like,
by the way, I want to stop it there. I was sort of interested, and several times he said, "I don't want to talk about this," and I was like, "Wait a second, but why? You're not driving this bus. It's her show. You want to talk." Were you taken aback by those remarks or not? Really?
That was weird. It was like, it's almost like he was at a congressional hearing and want to say, "All right, reclaiming my time, and then we're going to go on to the next topic." I'm like,
right.
Yeah, you're right. You're not driving the bus here. You're the passenger. You sit in the back of the car and listen to the music.
Well, and also, you're on my podcast. I'm giving you a platform, but you got to answer my questions. I would think. But I didn't see, this is why I was a little frustrated by not having the full hour, because I thought, well, maybe they've been talking about it for 20 minutes beforehand.
It was a long set. It started being the majority of the segment.
It was, because this was only 3 minutes in my part of it. So I didn't realize that. So that does clarify. So I can understand. I still thought it was a little presumptuous, but I understand why Bowman would have said that. So anyway.
But like Jimmy was the face of it. And Jimmy was wild, disgusting, nasty, and disrespectful. So
I want to stop it there. He was getting angry. He did. I remember those Jimmy Dore podcasts. I don't know, wild, disgusting, nasty. He was just saying, "Hey, this is a really good idea. Why don't you answer my calls? Why don't you do this?" Was he? And so Bowman doesn't specify exactly what. No,
nobody does. I mean, I've never watched Jimmy Dore. I saw like clips and stuff on social media where he would say like they're sellouts, they're corrupt, they're all this stuff. To me, that's not really the horrible things you can say about somebody. Like, somebody could say someone's corrupt or a sellout. If you don't think you are, then you just say, "No, I'm not." But hey, maybe, I don't know, maybe people don't like seeing what's in the mirror. I would also say, I mean, my thing is this. Jamal Bowman at one point said that no one ever reached out to me about this. I didn't hear about this whole Force the Vote thing. But then you say that you heard about it with Jimmy Dore. So it's that, like, you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. You can't say, I didn't know about it. It wasn't a big thing. I was a new member of Congress, to, hey, I heard about it from Jimmy Dore and I thought it was bad, that the way he talked about me. Well, so what? A lot of people who are kind of horrible people sometimes the clock strikes the right number twice if it's broken. That was just a good idea.
Well, and she answers him, and I think she has a good answer. So let me play a little bit of it more.
If the leader of that thing is like that, why would I even mess with y'all or take y'all seriously?
Because it's a good idea. Representative.
So, I mean, to me, that just is the answer. You don't need anything. Your job is not to be petty and be pissed off at Jimmy Dore. Your job is to do what's right for your constituents. And
that's it.
That's it.
Go home at the end of the day. Like, and my thing is this, like, even if they said, we don't think the Medicare for All thing is going to forcing that vote is going to work. We don't think these like legislative things are going to work. Then at least do it for your own position of power. Like when did their own self-preservation comes in to say, hey, maybe Jamal Bowman and Cory Booker could have had better committee seats that allowed them to bring more money home for their district. Maybe Katie Porter could have been put back on the banking committee that Maxine Waters took her off because her donors didn't like that Katie Porter was holding banks accountable. But no, they said
maybe you wouldn't lose in a primary. Exactly. If you deliver really meaningful reform because now Bowman's district had been redrawn, and a lot of wealthier, whiter, more Jewish Westchester was put in, and poorer, blacker New York City, Mount Vernon was taken out. And actually, I think some of it went to Richie Torres' district, who's horrible, horrible. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He should have ran against Richie Torres.
Yeah, he should have. I don't know what that was about, but he probably would have lost. I think the Israel thing would have killed him, which is terrible. It was his best issue in my view. That was the reason I told my family because I wasn't a Jamal Bowman fan, trust me, but I was like, yeah, he's better than Latimer, and he vote for him, and it was a tough call for them. I'm not sure how they went. My sister lives in a very Jewish, almost Orthodox neighborhood in New Rochelle, actually, which is, he talks about New Rochelle.
Yeah.
Every sign was a Bowman sign. Every sign. I mean, no. Latimer. Every sign was a Latimer sign. Every sign.
So that was really that. Wow. Okay.
The AIPAC stuff they killed him. They really did.
Now, did they kill him with his pro-Palestinian stance, or did they do it what AIPAC has done in non-Jewish majority communities, and they talk about just everything else?
So that's a great question. In this case, it was his better on Palestine than almost anybody else in Congress stance. That was absolutely the whole campaign against him was he's for Hamas. He doesn't. He equates the Jewish victims of this terrorist group with the, those who the Israeli military, the freedom fighters, are fighting against, and it was horrible. It was just so. He doesn't believe in the state of Israel, so he did lose in that district based on his. Now, I think they overstated it and mischaracterized it, but it was terrible. But I would say Cori Bush, she lost in her district because they misrepresented her and they went against her on other issues, not on Palestine. But if she has forced the vote, maybe she keeps that seat. We don't know, Carlos.
Maybe her district says, hey, she's out there making some change now. Was she the most activist-centered representative? Yes. At some point, if your activism isn't really delivering results, or your activism is seen as one of those acceptable forms of activism that the establishment can say, you know what, I'm fine with what you're doing. The moment I saw Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, all those people come to when she was sleeping out front of the Capitol steps and not getting them to say they're going to do anything about it, I thought, okay, cool, this is just a show now. Because there was like, we need something to be done, or like we need to extend the eviction moratorium. After the eviction moratorium ended, it was like, all right, cool, everybody pack up camp. We're going home.
And it didn't lead to lower or more affordable housing, right? No. There was it was kind of a false victory. They postponed 100 more days and then we're going to evict you.
Yeah.
And also they didn't toll the rent. So people had to pay the rent just down the road. It was a pretty BS activism by AOC and Cori Bush, who were the leaders. The reason I don't want to beat up Jamal Bowman, he's not in Congress anymore, but the reason I think that's important is because he's exposing the entire squad, the ones who are still there. You mentioned Katie Porter, Ayanna Pressley.
Oh, she's gone too.
Ilhan Omar. They didn't fight. They don't fight for you.
No. I mean, at best, I'll say Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are good when it comes to foreign policy. Outside of that, you know what? I'll say this. I think on the actual issues, yes, they are they are right on almost all of the issue areas in the solutions. The problem is, what good is it that you're right on the issues if you're not going to actually do something to actually make those solutions happen? To me, they would all be more efficient as podcasters, as like news anchors at this point. Because what do we like? You're in the space to make a change, and you're actually allowing yourself to not say anything about it. Like, to me, when Biden was in office, where was there a conversation about any form of Medicare for all, any form of like raising the
Well,
minimum wage?
we talked about reparations last time. There was no talk of reparations.
No, there wasn't even a talk about the bill that, honestly, if you talk to reparations activists, don't even really care for that bill to like study reparations. Democrats talk this whole time, can't even pass that. So to me, what are we doing? And yeah, it just to me seems like they only really get active if they know that they can't do anything because Republicans are in control.
My biggest beef with them actually is the whole force of the vote. They all voted for Nancy Pelosi, or except maybe AOC abstained or something, and they all voted for Hakeem Jeffries. And if your leadership is going to be so tied as those two are to Wall Street, to corporations, to the billionaire class, if the leader has so much power, they decide committee committee assignments and who the leaders of the committees are. If you're going to vote for them, nothing else you do is really relevant.
Yeah, I mean, you don't. Especially when that was probably your one chance in years that you'll ever be able to exert any type of power. And it shows that when you run on, hey, we are this change of the Democratic Party, it shows that if that didn't work, there is no change in the Democratic Party that can happen. Everyone, once you are in the Democratic Party, they expect you to fall in line, do as you're told, and call it a day.
We got a couple more clips. We got one more clip here. This is on and whether the squad is any good. Here's Brianna Joy Gray with Jamal Bowman.
Sorry, now so
by the way, you could see she was getting so frustrated, wasn't she? It was like when she was interviewing Joseph Guy Varghese. Well, we talked about that, I think, last time. It's the face plant over and over because they're deliberately not getting it.
Exactly.
They're deliberately not getting it. All right, here we go.
I do think that there was utility in people like yourselves being within the Democratic Party. So now we can see, we have proof positive for how antagonistic the Democratic Party is willing to be to its own members who are to their left. Similarly, I don't think Bernie Sanders running for president twice or me working on the 2020 campaign was a waste of my life. I joke that he took my mid-30s, but I don't actually think it was a waste of time but for those examples, we wouldn't be able to say so confidently that the Democratic Party is willing to be more hostile to the left than they are to Trump and rising fascism and all the things that they have been warning about for all of these years. So I don't think that, I think that the role you and Cori Bush and the others have played is very instructive. The question is what you do with that energy now. Do you say, I was treated so badly and disrespected in these ways, and yet I'm going to come back and sort of manufacture consent for this party year after year, tell people to vote blue no matter who for the lesser of two evils, et cetera, et cetera? Or do you take the lesson from this, that the reason that we're in the situation right now with Donald Trump is because the Democratic Party chose to align with Zionism, with corporatism, with all of these interest groups that are against the American people. And as a consequence, there's a void. And Donald Trump and his faux populism was willing to fill the void. And if you want to prevent fascism from rising, you have to fill the void with real populism, which is not going to be found within the Democratic Party for all of the reasons of industry capture that you've described so well. And to me, that means telling your audience, telling your people that you have to.
She talks even more than I do, which is pretty hard. I have noticed that she does sometimes go on, and I didn't remember that this was such a long question.
It's the lawyer.
It's really more of an answer, but I think it's all correct. She's nailing it.
Yeah, she is. I mean, she's 100% right. I mean, it was good that we ran the test case that we ran the test and saw it doesn't work out. But you know what else? And how please feel free to tell me I'm wrong in this, please. Is it that it failed because they are Democrats, or we just chose very like weak people? Because to me, it's that what is the difference between AOC and a Marjorie Taylor Greene? Other than one is willing to not care how people think of her. And I'm thinking, why doesn't the left have that? Do they not have that because the people aren't that way when they go in? Or is it because that's just the party itself?
Well, I can't tell you you're wrong because you asked me a question, but are you saying you think it's they? I mean, do you think it's like some sort of congenital thing among these so-called leftists like AOC that they just aren't really fighters, whereas the people on the right are fighters? Are you saying that you think they're innately? I mean, I don't. I don't. I think there's something. I'll say it this way. I think there's something in the Republican strain, the conservative. You know, like the Western, right? Like the Shane who rides into town. He's a ride alone. You're by. You know, I think there is that sort of that individual, independent, iconic character is who the right likes to think they are. I'm not saying they are. But I think they sort of do, and that means that you stand up against, you know, Jack Palance, and you shoot the bad guy in the saloon. Whereas the Democrats are all like, let's, you know, Hakuna Matata, all come together, you know, and that means you don't stand up, right? You don't. So maybe there's truth to that. I think so. I think here's where I think our bigger failure is, honestly, Carlos, on the left. We elect people like AOC, fine. I would have voted for her in a heartbeat. But I think then after a while, you're like, wait a second. You know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Don't we at some point say, wait a second, we can do better. We've got to, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep fooling us, right? And yet we keep being fooled. We keep letting these people fool us.
I wouldn't even say we're letting people fool us all the way. I think there's a section of people, yes, you're right. There's definitely a section of people who are like, I am the squad no matter what, because they're the best we got and we got to keep them. I think that's more of the like fear of not having them and feel like, so what if there's no one representing us? Well, maybe there isn't anyone representing us, so it would be the truth of what you're looking at. But I think to the other end of it is that I think a lot of voters are just disengaged. I think a lot of people, first of all, I think in our country, and I've also heard people talk about how the reason that Americans don't kind of go further than voting when it comes to like political advocacy and activism and just actually knowing how things change is because we're not a country that's been through a whole lot of civil wars. Like we haven't had a whole lot of regime changes to where it's like, all right, we have to continuously fight for what we want. I think a lot of people look at it as once I vote, I should be done. That is my way of engaging. After that, it is on to you. And I think because elected officials do not use protesting or to actually like empowering people to protest as a way to move things forward, I think that a lot of people do not think that protesting and change actually go together. People think that now it's just, hey, I vote.
I think the party system is a real problem in this regard because, you know, Barack Obama in his first term, I don't think there were some things he did that were good, but a lot he didn't do. He did bail out the big banks, not the underwater homeowners who had been defrauded. His Affordable Care Act really was weak sauce given the situation. And I think he was even proposing the grand betrayal, grand bargain at the end of his first term. But there was zero challenge, right? Bernie talked a little bit about taking him on in a primary, but then he ultimately didn't. So the party system that we have now, the winner take all, makes it very hard for the, you know, to take on these people. And so that segues us. And I think that's a big issue, right? Is that we don't, you know, we say it's time to go home. Well, you work so hard. You spend so much time and energy to try to get somebody elected. And especially if it's someone like a Barack Obama, and they are, you're like, oh, this is so great. I get to rest on my laurels. And it doesn't work out, and you don't really have a do-over if they don't perform the way you want. So I think that is correct. That's a terrible issue. I do think the party system is very, very problematic as well. And you mentioned this story, Carlos. I had to look it up. I wasn't aware of this. Katie Porter is the front runner right now in the California race for governor, and I hope she gets it. And I kind of like Katie Porter, but she has said, you pointed this out to me, hey, if Harris enters the race, I'm not going to run. That's exactly what we're talking about, right? Whereas you defer and you don't challenge party leaders, and we lose.
Yeah, they have made, and this even goes this touches on this point and also touches on the last point too. They have made people and elected officials into celebrities. So it does not become a thing of, I don't like your politics, so now I have the issue with you being in office. It comes into a point of, I voted for you. I like you as a person. So I don't care what you do. I just think of you as a celebrity. So you come around, we take pictures, and then you go home. And that's it. So people don't have that intuitiveness of actually, no, you're there to make change. But to Kamala Harris, and I mean, I just don't see the point. Like, Kamala Harris, when running for president, couldn't do better than, I mean, actually, no, she didn't even get in the primary in California for president. It was polling below Andrew Yang. So one, I mean, there's a great case against her winning it all. Two, we know how unpopular she was across the country, and I'm sure that also goes to who is it? It also goes to California. But you look, I think Kamala Harris can have that, and I don't want to say this like this because it's just women who kind of fit not really all women, but it's some women who fit in that category of your Nancy Pelosi's and your Hillary Clintons. So where they're someone you can use as like she represents this side of the just political spectrum that's horrible for people. And what would it look like if Kamala Harris gets to the general election and loses to a Republican, and then California goes to a Republican? And it's like, Kamala Harris, I am afraid, has that viewpoint. Like she has that ability.
She could lose. No argument. If you look at these polling numbers, they don't, to my way of thinking, in any way support Katie Porter dropping out. When Harris isn't in the race, the poll shows Porter 26%, Cox, the Republican, at 21%. But when Harris is included, she gets to 23%. So she's not like even as high as Porter is with Harris out. And Cox is only 2 points below her at 21. Porter's down at third with 16, but that's, this is super early. Obviously, people know who Kamala Harris is. She was running for president. She was in all the TV ads and the like. So this, to me, doesn't seem like a good reason for Porter not to run. But all that said, I'm okay with it. You don't want to run, Katie Porter, fine. I think that is an opportunity. Maybe a Green Party candidate. I don't think they're going to win into the top two, but hey, you make a splash. You make a splash.
There. He's running for governor of California. I think a dream for Butch Ware would be him versus Kamala Harris in the general, or him versus Cox. That would be the dream. Do I think they can get to that point? I'm never going to say never, because I didn't think we'd have the people elected who we do have. So there's always the option for that. And I think having Kamala Harris as the only candidate actually could be beneficial to getting Butch Ware on there. I think another problem, though, is that their general elections are the top two, not just the top two in their respective parties, but the top two of just whoever gets all the votes. And I think that's where Democrats could be saying, maybe if we all consolidate our vote and it's only Kamala Harris, then that assures she will be in the general. I think if they had multiple candidates for governor, Kamala Harris might not get in the top two. And I think that's where they would really...
It would be really embarrassing, right? It would be super embarrassing. But you mentioned Dr. Butch Ware. He's a professor down in, I think, Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. I would love to see him, get that. I mean, and he is a very fiery speaker. He is very powerful. He's very, he's quick, right? Yeah. Which is really important in politics. So I, if you get him on a stage with Kamala Harris, I think he dominates.
Yeah, her. I don't know. I don't even know who this John Cox guy is, but
I don't know
him,
who he is.
or even the guy who ran for mayor of Los Angeles and lost to Karen Bass. Even him, I think Butch Ware is just a very, as we were talking about Obama, even Obama, Clinton, he has that charismatic personality that draws people in, but he is different from them. And once he draws them in, he keeps them there and actually continues to work with them to help him move forward and to help his agenda move forward. So I think he would be, if he got elected, I think the Green Party would be the next coming up of like taking over the Democratic Party and being the establishment, or the being one of the duopoly.
All right, writer activist Carlos Childs with us. We're kind of wrapping things up. Just a few more quick questions, Carlos, for you. I saw the name Karen Bass. You just mentioned Mayor Bass as a potential candidate. I don't see how she can win. These fires, I think, have completely.
Oh, not her running. The guy who ran against her. I think she's been a bad.
She's not popular now, but I think she even said she might run. But yeah, it's not Villaraigosa. He was the mayor before her. But I thought Karen Bass was a possible governor. Maybe not, but I don't see her getting anywhere at this point.
No, I mean, first of all they're going to do is bring up the fires and bring up the clip of her basically ignoring a reporter asking her about it. And then it's going to be like, why are we going to vote for her? Like she's going to let the whole state burn down.
She didn't come across well. I'm sorry to say. She didn't handle a difficult situation well enough.
Yeah,
to maintain to stay in power at this point. I don't think. I don't know who she beat, but I'm going to look that up right now. I know that it was Villaraigosa before her, and I think he might be someone who would consider running also for governor. But apparently, they're all going to step down if, in favor of Harris, which is terrible. It's so anti-democratic. It means we don't decide. It means the voters don't decide.
Yeah.
So we've been through this a lot, Carlos. We see things the same way. We're kind of down, depressed, maybe not hopeless, but pessimistic about the possibility of change in the political system. But where do you see the possibilities? Like in the Butch Ware campaign, I didn't play the clip, but in Jamal Bowman's local initiatives, right, where he talks a lot about working in Mount Vernon, poor neighborhoods, poor cities. My concern is he's going to do it to try to sheepdog those folks into the Democratic Party. He never said he wouldn't. That's my concern. But taking a better view of it, if he's really going to use his influence, his name, to build something within these underserved communities, these frontline communities, could that form the basis of real change?
Yeah, I think that has the opportunity. I also think I'm excited to see what happens locally. What happens in off year this year for certain races. I'm excited to see what happens within our state that we live in, Maryland, when it comes to elections locally, to see who are the people who are locally, but also Congress level, just nationally, who are the people who are going to tap into that feeling of a lot of voters having now of, I don't like the establishment because you all are palling around with Trump and not fighting hard enough, to actually seeing the people who are going to fight hard enough. And I think that voters, there's a potential now for voters to be like, I'm not just going to vote for you and think that that's it. If I don't see you actually providing enough fight for them, they're going to say, I'm done with you too. And I'm done. And I think that the Democrats are at a point now, if they do not course correct quickly, that they will see just their own voter base just not turn to vote Republican, maybe not even turn to vote Green Party, which I hope that they actually do, but stay home. And they have no base anymore.
I think that's exactly right. I think they have no base. They're clearly not the working person's party anymore. I'm not saying the Republicans are, but the working people do not view the Democratic Party as their home anymore. Young people don't. Maybe more think of themselves Democrats than they do Republicans, but they don't see it as the party of that for them or of them. So I with that, there certainly is an opportunity, but something needs to fill the void. We can hope it is the Green Party. We can hope it's progressives. But that's for me, all it is a hope, not one that I feel is a real viable one, right?
Yeah.
Very sad.
I think a Green Party is viable. I think it's a long-term strategy with short-term wins. I think that the Green Party needs to start winning these like more local city councils, county councils, school board seats, something that they have an internal infrastructure to start winning. I know Andy Ellis is running for governor in Maryland. I would like to see what Green Party candidates come out of like local races, ones that are possibly winnable, like we saw almost happen on the in Baltimore City with Franca Mueller-Paz, I think. So it's like try to win some of these local races that when people talk about Green Party members, they can say, "Oh, actually, I know a Green Party member who's elected." Because you had what's the name? The lady in D.C. who lost her election. She was the only Green Party member in D.C. who was in office.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I think her name was Elise. She was
Oh
she was
yeah,
an at-large person.
that's right. Silverman,
Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're
Alyssa
right.
Silverman.
Yes, and she. I mean, hey, so that's something that once I knew that I'm like, all right, cool. I can't say I've never heard of a elected official in or Green Party person in in the DMV area because we had one.
The district has this really interesting electoral system where they set aside a seat for a alternative party, I believe.
Oh, really?
Now, I
thought
don't
it
know
was
if
like
you're guaranteed it, but they actually have made the certain incentives to make it a lot easier for someone who's independent of the two major parties. And I think Alyssa Silverman took advantage of that. But that's a great name. Thanks for reminding me about Alyssa.
Yeah.
She was good. She was
We
good. I
got
mean,
some
none of these people are perfect. And my wife always says they're all politicians. They all say what they think you want to hear and do what they want to do. But
Yep.
but we need to get away from this sinister duopoly. And you've offered us hope, Carlos. So for that, I really thank you.
You give me hope.
Always
Thank you.
inform. You always teach me a lot.
Amen.
I'll be back. This will be the end of Thursday's program. I will be live for the Free for All Friday, and then I'm off next week, at least for 4, if not all 5 days.
Okay, there
Thanks,
you
Carlos.
go. No problem.